समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme related documents carefully.
More than a decade ago, I wrote a national interest headlined The Idea of Pakistan. It is from that that today's somewhat unconventional episode of Katta Clutter is drawn. It picks up the thread from there and then looks at where we have come today. That argument started with a common cliched trope, though only to dump it, saying that trope is outdated. I will come to it in just a little while. And the conclusions it led to have not only been proven since, but have acquired an entirely new currency now with the elevation of Asim Munir and the rise of a new mutant in the multi-generation hybrid structure of governance in Pakistan. Since hyphenated with us or not, Pakistan will never go away as a neighbor. Remember what Vajpayee used to say, you cannot choose your neighbors. Pakistan will never go away as a neighbor, and its hostility towards India will remain intact even if it waxes and wanes at various points of time. We need to pay closer attention to studying its power structure and what is central to it, or what lies at its core, that is, its army. At which point, I will read you a few lines of poetry that Pakistani Military Intelligence Directorate issues to its officers' academies, to the cadets as they come in. It's a wish and a prayer. As the words would suggest, stay with me, I will read out the words for you. As the words would suggest to you, it was probably written by an American, though the Pakistanis probably thought it was some British Kipling type. I draw this from Steve Cohen's seminal The Pakistan Army, page 52. And please stay with me as we reach the conclusion of this argument, because I will bring back to you the same piece of poetry, but with a twist that completes the story. And here is the poem. This is page 52 of Steve Cohen's book, and the chapter titled The Officer's Corps. And it says, God, give us men, a time like this demands. I'm sure an American wrote it. It should have been demands. Strong minds, great hearts, true faith, and ready hands. Men whom the lust of office does not kill, men whom the spoils of office cannot buy. Hello, this is said to the cadets in the Pakistan Army, because the moment somebody becomes an officer in Pakistan Army, they think that to become the president of Pakistan, or to become the equivalent of the president of Pakistan, to wield more power than an elected prime minister of Pakistan, is actually a reasonable, legitimate aspiration. However, this prayer tells them, men whom the lust of office does not kill, men whom the spoils of office cannot buy, men who possess opinion and a will, men who have honor, men who will not lie, hello again, men who can stand before a demagogue, hello again, and damn his treacherous flatteries without winking, tall men, sunburnt, who live above the fog, to public duty and in private thinking. Those few lines that I read to you, you will also see them on your screen from this page. You can read them at leisure. Those few lines, you might wonder, do these really apply to Pakistan Army? Think of these lines. Men who possess an opinion and will, men whom the spoils of office cannot buy, men whom the lust of office does not kill, etc., etc., etc. Men of honor who will not lie. Does this apply to Pakistan Army? Now, the old theory that I was talking about, the old trope, which I said that I had used 10 years back, and which I had then said we should dump. Let me come back to it. That is the old Ghisapeta AAA theory. That is Army, Allah and America run Pakistan. That is Ghisapeta, outdated, old over. The use by date on that was over more than a decade ago. Neither Allah nor America defines the power structure of Pakistan. Neither Allah, as in religious politics, not God Almighty, religious politics. Neither Allah nor America defines the power structure of Pakistan. That power lies entirely with the third A, its army. So a solitary A now decides who has the power in Pakistan and what they do with that power. It is about time that we, including me, conceded that our analysis and understanding of Pakistani polity, society and power structure has been deeply flawed. We were wrong. Or we might say 1/3 right, 2/3 flawed. Here is why I'm explaining to you. For decades now, the tired but trusted AAA Army Allah America formulation that has held among analysts, the argument being that nothing moves there without one of these wishing or with one of these vetoing. That means two might wish, but third can veto, right? Or one can wish, other can follow. This has been questioned now for 10-15 years, and the fact is by now, this equation is completely over. It should be buried. My revised hypothesis is that Allah and America are unnecessarily blamed for the uniquely complicated picture in Pakistan. Of course, I'm neither an atheist nor so foolhardy as to question divine majesty, but neither religion nor the relationship with the US defines the power structure or ideology of Pakistan. Only the army does. The army defines the national ideology, pretends to protect it, but definitely prospers from it. I am therefore sticking my neck out to dump the wisdom of more than 6 decades and put forward some sweeping generalizations. Going backwards chronologically over the past several weeks, say beginning 22nd of April, the Pahalgam outrage, we have seen various things. We have seen various developments that we've been talking about. I will not go into them in detail, but these have culminated with Asim Munir's promotion, his beginning to speak on every issue. He was doing it even earlier, including Pakistan's economy, and Pakistan's Prime Minister in his presence speaking like he's actually singing his praises. When they're around, you can see who the boss is. In fact, I will quote to you one example about the powers that the Pakistani Army has had in that system, even when there have been elected governments. This has only become more pronounced now. So one example I will mention to you is American independent journalist, investigative journalist Seymour Hersh, the prominent American investigative journalist's expose in the London Review of Books on the Osama bin Laden killing. He had claimed that it was a stage-managed tamasha with CIA and ISI/Pakistan Army and Mili Bhagat, as we might call it in the subcontinent. This had an underlying message, and that's my interpretation, that in a nation of 200 million then, now it's about 250 million, that in a nation of 200 million then, with nuclear weapons, two generals, Ashfaq Parvez Kayani and Ahmad Shuja Pasha, one army chief and one ISI chief, felt empowered to make a deal like this without any reference to the elected civilian government. This was the elected civilian government after the departure of Parvez Musharraf. Nobody told them anything, but these generals made a deal with the CIA and the Americans. That was Seymour Hersh's claim. Hersh's claims were rubbished by his American peers, which is what journalists do when beaten on a story. I know that from experience. When people get beaten on a story, the first thing they try to do is to try and get the story denied or to try and pick holes in it. That's what was done to Seymour Hersh also. Now, I will take another minute to elaborate on Seymour Hersh's story. One of the very few sources named in Hersh's story was Lieutenant General Asad Durrani. You remember him? He wrote a book jointly with Amarjit Singh Dulat. He was ISI chief between 1990 and 1992. And he is supposed to have told Seymour Hersh that this deal was made between Pakistan Army ISI and the CIA US government. I met Asad Durrani for the first time in December 1998 at a Track 2 meeting in Kudumba Village Resort, Maldives, a 10-minute boat ride away from Malé Airport. Several Indian and Pakistani former military and intelligence chiefs were there, also writers, journalists, strategic scholars from both sides. Talking about the improving climate in India-Pakistan relations months after the nuclear tests by both, I said one reason was the relative calm in Kashmir, that there was relative calm in Kashmir, and that's how our relationship was looking better. Durrani did not like it. He had been in retirement for many years, but he did not like it. He looked up coldly at me and said just one short sentence. It can all change very quickly in Kashmir. I'm quoting him. It can all change very quickly in Kashmir. Warning delivered, he returned to doodling on the conference notepad. 2 months later, Atal Bihari Vajpayee went to Lahore on the bus. The Lahore Declaration was signed. In May the same year, fighting broke out in Kargil. You can safely conclude that infiltration was at its peak when our Track 2 meeting was on in Maldives. And Durrani, a former spy master then, was fully in the know and also cocky and indiscreet. It stands to reason, therefore, that he would also be on the inside track on the Osama raid. If he was a source for the Harsh story, Harsh found a reliable source because the Pakistani Army as an institution has a continuity that many of us outside do not easily understand. There were doubts elsewhere in the world also, notably in India. But there was one country where these were by and large believed readily. In fact, speculation immediately began on the identity of the ISI walkin who sold Osama to the CIA. In fact, the theory that Seymour Hersh's article talked about was that some ISI officer walked into the American embassy and offered them this secret and Osama bin Laden's whereabouts. That was the walk-in. First, stay with me, take a deep breath, lean back and look backwards and think hard. We are in the 17th year of uninterrupted elected civilian governments. Remember, I said civilian governments, I didn't say ruled by civilian governments. This has shown that the army in Pakistan no longer has the stomach to take over the power formally. It has demonstrated that it does not need to. While it does not want to take over power formally, it has also demonstrated that it does not need to. See, Field Marshal Asim Munir now. Power stays with the army anyway. Over these 17 years, rather than grow in stature, civil governments have diminished. See how the army took over not just military operations but also diplomacy during Op Sindoor and after. Marco Rubio also finally called General Asif Munir, then General Asif Munir, when he wanted to close the deal on a ceasefire. And the note of assertion that you hear, not just from the army chiefs now, but even from the DGs of ISPR. Lately, the current one, you've seen him talk also in the presence of his chief. It looks like they all know that they are the bosses and they are in command. And the civilian government, if anything, is there on this outside. That's a little bit of an artifact. You can go further back for more evidence. Imran Khan seeking GHQ intervention to bring down Nawaz Sharif in 2017-18. The army advising all politicians to shun conflict amongst themselves. The chief attending top political meetings when body language as well as the order of seating tells you who the boss is. Most Pakistanis acknowledge this. Some even rue this. But that number is now reducing. The distrust of generals is widespread. That is the reason why Seymour Hersh's story found most immediate acceptance in Pakistan, while there was skepticism in America, in Britain, and in India as well. Yet they rarely hold the institution of the army responsible. Isn't it odd? The people rarely trust the generals. Their country keeps on getting messed up, but they almost never hold the institution of the army responsible. I asked my Pakistani friends a cruel question. Why is the army held in such awe when it has lost your country? Over half its territory, that's Bangladesh, got no more of Kashmir than you had in 1948. In fact, they have less of Kashmir than they had in 1984 because they lost Siachen, and after 1971, they lost a bunch of very important heights in Turtuk, up north in the Himalayas, and also in Kargil. The same army has reduced your country into a university of radicalism, destroyed its institutions, depleted the economy. This enables the army to build mythologies. The stalemates like 1985 and then a defeat, Kargil, and now Op Sindoor into victories. And a proper, full and proper defeat like 1971 into stories of deceit by some generals and incompetence of other individual generals. The only time you see questioning of the army is when a general has spent close to 10 years in power. That is Ziaul Haq, Parvez Musharraf, or messed up a war with India, Ayub Khan, Yahya Khan. Yet the institution finds something soon enough to redeem itself. In the most recent period, the army was in that kind of bad odor, mainly because they jailed Imran Khan, they denied him power. He was the most popular politician, they didn't let him contest. They jailed him, they jailed many of his people, and there was a popular anger with the army. Even that's over now. So far, even Imran Khan has been supporting the army. It's only now that he's issued a statement. See it on your screens. It's only now that he's issued a statement attacking Field Marshal Asim Munir for harassing his wife. In 2008, the army, following the Musharraf years, was in bad odor. Not just bad odor, it was hated at that point. That is when the slogan, "ये जो दहशतगर्दी है, उसके पीछे वर्दी है," that the terrorism that you see, what's behind it? The uniform is behind it. That slogan emerged at that time. But the army then used the 26/11 attacks to create an utterly fake spectre of an Indian attack. They were the guilty party. They were behind the attacks. And they created now the spectre, fake spectre, that an Indian attack was coming. They had Air Force jets flying low over their own cities to build the fervor, and overnight the army was the savior, and Asif Ali Zardari's elected government just spineless. Spineless. Particularly as it even asked the ISI chief to visit India. That visit was, by the way, aborted. This was the point when Musharraf tried to resurrect himself, using his disastrous military misadventure of Kargil to build another mythology. In fact, he said at that point that in Kargil we had Indians by their throats. It's only the weak politicians who force us to make a compromise. So the army always has the power to define the context and to write the history. It's the oldest saying that the winner writes the history. In Pakistan's case, army is always the winner. So they always write the history. They can also rewrite the history. More than 75 years after the departure of Muhammad Ali Jinnah, very few civilian role models of heroes have come up. Heroes you will name new roads, cities, institutions after, whose busts or memorials you might put up in your schools, colleges, government offices, public figures, politicians, political leaders, not even former generals. They are held in disrepute. Some cricketers maybe, but even among the cricketers, the most prominent, the biggest hero has now been in jail for 2 years, and nobody can question the army. Through this period, we've hardly had any contemporary politicians, intellectuals, artists, scientists. I do not believe you would insist A.Q. Khan was a civilian or a scientist. Physicist Abdul Salam, Nobel laureate, was not just Pakistan's but the entire Islamic world's first Nobel-winning scientist, but never found his place in the Pakistani mind and history because he was not even seen to be a Muslim. He was an Ahmadiyya. Most of Pakistan's post-1947 heroes have been soldiers, not generals but soldiers. Gallantry Award winners in wars with India. They have streets and landmarks named after them. And as I told you, I haven't seen one named after a general. And why? Probably because the most famous ones ended up being exiled, discredited, defeated, or assassinated, or a combination of these. The generals went away in disrepute, but their deeds did not hurt the institution of the army. Again, there is a massive surge in the army's popularity post Op Sindoor. A victory has been declared. Support for its war on India now is near unanimous. The leaders of Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed are being hailed in public. The army, the corps commander of Lahore, attended the funeral of one killed in the IAF strikes. Even in the past, when Operation Zarb-e-Azb was launched against the domestic terrorists, Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, after the provocation of the Peshawar Army school attack, very few dared to ask why the Pakistan Army had built the Pakistani Taliban in the first place. I also asked my Pakistani friends another cruel question. Why is the army held in such reverence and awe when it has lost you more than half your country, that's Bangladesh, got you no more of Kashmir than you had in 1948. In fact, it has less because it lost Siachen and also some of the territories it lost in 1971. Crucial territories, particularly high up in Turtuk, etc., facing Baltistan. It has destroyed your institutions, made the country a university and exporter of radicalism, driven out investment and skilled people, and depleted its economy. Until 40 years ago, Pakistan's per capita income was 60-70% higher than India's. Today, it's almost a half. If it's not exactly a half, but I would say today India's per capita GDP, per capita income is about 175% of Pakistan's. So what was a 65% lead in 1985 has now become a 75 percentage point deficit. From where did it come? The army has ruled for most of this period, directly or by proxy, or now, which is neither directly nor proxy. As I told you, it's a new hybrid, a new mutant. Yet nobody blames the army. I believe Pakistan lost its economic advantage early 1980s onwards. That is when they were 65% more than us in their per capita GDP. As Zia then, flushed by the Afghan jihad and flushed with American money, discovered radicalized terror as a weapon of choice against India. If we could do it to the Soviet Union, we could do it to India as well. Ayub, Yahya, Zia, Musharraf, and now Kayani. None of the former chiefs is popular, or rather not unpopular. They are all unpopular. Yet their army is the only institution that is trusted and respected. How do you square the two? That's the reason I argue that it is the army that defined a post-Jinnah ideology for Pakistan, a new post-Jinnah ideology. This Pakistan that you have is not based on Jinnah's ideology. It has no resemblance to Jinnah's ideology. The army captured the popular imagination, institutionalized it through textbooks and military mythologies and through Pakistan studies. In curriculum, the army merely discovered America in the 50s to counter India and radicalism, which is actually the more appropriate word for Allah. In the early 80s, as it saw the success of the good Afghan jihad, the Americans are widely detested in Pakistan, so are at least one set of armed radicals, that is TTP right now. And at the same time, the religious parties never got a vote share in double figures. That's why my current hypothesis that in the Pakistani situation, only one A really matters, A for army. Good thing is, as my friend of many decades and the finest Pakistani commentator Khalid Ahmed, who passed away last year, he used to write a column for us in the Indian Express. He pointed out several years ago, there is an inclination, at least in Pakistan, there has been an inclination to debate the issue. His optimism came from the fact that the fairly recent, well-researched but scathing book Fighting to the End, The Pakistani Army's Way of War by American scholar C. Christine Fair, had not only been not banned in Pakistan, but was being widely bought and discussed. I believe that this book is one of the better, if brutal, insights into the minds of the world's most ideological army, which also happens to have as many nukes as India and Israel, if not more, definitely more than Israel, and is so overwhelmingly popular with its people. And now, two things before I let you go. I told you that I will bring you some kind of a postscript to that poem. Let me just read out to you what Steve Cohen writes. He says, more poignantly, the prayer, that's the name of the poem, the prayer distributed by the Intelligence Directorate was in fact written by an American writer and poet, particularly in 1859-65, and refers to the United States during its Civil War. Most Pakistani officers who have read it assumed that its author was an anonymous British Army or British Indian Army officer. Furthermore, writes Steve Cohen, the version as printed in Pakistan or as released by the Pakistani Intelligence Directorate, Army Intelligence Directorate to its cadets, omits the last 4 lines of the original. So listen to the last 4 lines. These lines tell you a story. This omission tells you a story. And the lines are, for while the rabble with their thumb-worn creeds, their large professions and their little deeds, hello Pakistan Army, mingle in selfish strife, lo, freedom weeps, wrong rules the land, and waiting justice sleeps. So this omission also tells you a story of how an institution builds a power structure in a way that its customized to keeping its preeminence forever. What we are seeing in Pakistan right now is the same story playing out, and it's very important for us to understand this as we go ahead, because India may want to get a move on and move ahead of Pakistan and maybe even ignore Pakistan, but there is one institution in Pakistan which will keep pulling you back. That is the Pakistani Army. And again, the irony is that while each such effort takes their own country backwards, their population then becomes even more loyal to the same institution. That's the contradiction we have to live with and we have to deal with.